Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next part of the story to see how Mark's decision changes everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next part of the story to see how Mark's decision changes everything. Mark had no idea what he was getting himself into. The contract marriage had seemed like a simple solution at the time, a way to escape his mounting debts and the endless pressure weighing on his shoulders. But now, as he stood at the grand entrance of Eleanor Brooks' estate, he could feel the weight of his decision settle deeper into his chest. The mansion loomed ahead, its towering columns and pristine stone facade exuding an old-money elegance that made him feel like a stranger in another world. The cab pulled to a stop, and Mark stepped out, his suitcase in hand. Eleanor, standing on the front steps, gave him a cool, composed smile. "Welcome, Mr. Davis," she said, her voice calm, but with a note of authority that sent a shiver down his spine. She gestured for him to follow her inside. Mark couldn't help but feel out of place. The marble floors, the high ceilings,
We
the
hold the stronger
chandeliers,
position here.
everything about this house
I understand why you
screamed
did it,
wealth
but
and sophistication.
I have questions.
He had never been in a place
And
like
I may
this
not
before,
have all the answers
and
you're
it made him
looking for.
feel small in comparison. As they walked through the grand hallway, Eleanor led him to a large room, furnished with antiques and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. "Your room," she said, pausing in the doorway. "Make yourself comfortable. Dinner will be at 7. Mark nodded, still processing everything. "Thank you," he muttered, stepping inside the room. It was beautiful. No, more than beautiful.
We
It was
need to
lavish.
talk.
The bed
I
was
agree.
king-sized, draped in
But perhaps somewhere
expensive-looking
more
linens,
private.
and there was a sitting area with plush chairs and a small desk. But it didn't feel like home. It felt cold, sterile, as if it had been prepared for someone who was just passing through. After unpacking, Mark wandered around the mansion, his mind racing with everything that had happened. His agreement to marry Eleanor wasn't about love.
Are you
It was
certain
a
we should
business
accept these
arrangement,
terms?
a contract. But as he
Absolutely.
walked through the opulent
We hold the
halls,
stronger
he
position
couldn't
here.
help but wonder about the
I
woman
understand
he was
why you
about
did
to
it,
marry.
but
Who was
I have
Eleanor really?
questions.
What did she want from
And I
him?
may not have all the
beyond
answers you're
just a
looking for.
companion? He didn't have much time to dwell on his thoughts. A few hours later, he found himself seated at the dinner table, across from Eleanor. She looked as poised as ever, her silver hair pulled back into a neat bun, and her outfit elegant but simple. There was an air of control about her that made Mark uneasy, but he pushed the feeling down. The dinner was quiet at first, the clinking of silverware the only sound breaking the silence. Eleanor
We need
asked
to
him about
talk.
his law school
I
studies,
agree.
about his family,
But
and about
perhaps
his
somewhere more
life
private.
before he had agreed to this arrangement. He answered her questions, trying to keep the conversation casual, but in the back of his mind, he was still grappling with the decision he had made. "You know," Eleanor said after a while, her voice soft but firm, "this is not going to be easy. This isn't just about sharing my name. You'll be expected to attend
certain
events,
we should accept these
meetings,
terms?
and family functions with me.
Absolutely.
We'll be a couple in the
We
eyes
hold
of
the
the
stronger
public,
position
but
here.
behind closed doors,
I
there
understand
are
why you
rules."
did it, but
Mark met her gaze.
I have questions.
"What kind of rules?"
And
he
I may
asked,
not have all
his
the answers you're
curiosity
looking
piqued.
for.
"No love," she replied simply. "No emotions. This is a transaction, Mark. We both get something out of it." He nodded, feeling the heaviness of her words. He had known what he was getting into, but hearing it from her made it all the more real. The night dragged on, and after dinner, Eleanor led him to the study, where they signed the marriage contract. The ink on the paper was still fresh. As Mark put his pen down, he had just agreed to a future
need to
that wasn't
talk.
his own,
I
but it was the
agree.
only choice he had.
But perhaps
As the
somewhere more
contract was
private.
finalized, Eleanor's eyes met his. "This is just the beginning, Mark," she said softly. "There will be no turning back now." Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew this was just the beginning of something far more complicated than he had imagined. Later that night,
Are you
as he
certain
lay
we
in
should accept
bed,
these terms?
staring at the ceiling, Mark thought about his family,
We hold the
his
stronger
mother,
position
his
here.
sister, the debt
I
that was
understand
still
why you did it,
looming
but
over him.
I
This
have
arrangement,
questions.
this contract,
And I may
was
not have all the
supposed to
answers
solve
you're
everything.
looking for.
But as he closed his eyes, he wondered if it was enough. Was this truly the solution he had hoped for, or had he just traded one set of problems for another? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. He got up and opened it to find Eleanor standing there, her face expressionless. "We need to talk," she said, her voice carrying an edge. Mark's heart skipped a beat. What now? Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Will Mark's decision lead him to a life of luxury?
I agree.
Or will the contract take an unexpected
But perhaps
turn?
somewhere more
The
private.
following morning, Mark awoke to the sound of soft footsteps outside his door. His mind was still foggy, and for a moment, he wondered if the events of the past few days had been some kind of strange dream. But the reality of the situation hit him almost immediately as he remembered where he was and why he was here. He glanced at the clock on the wall,
we should accept these
7:30
terms?
a.m. He had slept more
Absolutely.
soundly than he expected,
We hold the
but
stronger
the weight of the
position here.
decision he had made was still
I
heavy
understand
on
why
his
you did it,
chest.
but
A knock on the
I have
door
questions.
interrupted his thoughts.
And I may
Mark
not have
stood
all
up,
the answers you're
stretching
looking
his
for.
arms before walking to open it. There stood Eleanor, her expression as unreadable as ever. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm but firm. Mark stepped aside, allowing her into the room. She didn't wait for an invitation to sit. Moving to one of the chairs near the window, Mark closed the door behind her and sat down on the bed, unsure of what was coming next. "I thought we were done with the formalities last night," Mark said,
need to talk.
his voice tinged with
I agree.
exhaustion. Eleanor glanced
But perhaps
at him,
somewhere more
her
private.
eyes cold and distant. "We are," she replied. "But I wanted to make something very clear." She paused, letting the silence stretch between them. Mark was about to speak, but she held up a hand to stop him. "This arrangement isn't just about you living here and attending events with me. It's about appearances, Mark. I need you to understand that."
Are you certain we
Mark
should accept
frowned,
these terms?
his thoughts racing. "What do you mean?"
Absolutely.
"People will be
We
watching
hold the
us,"
stronger position
Eleanor
here.
continued, her gaze
understand why you
piercing
did
as
it,
she
but
looked at him.
I have
"The
questions.
press, my family,
And I
business
may not have
partners.
all the answers
This
you're looking
isn't just
for.
a marriage of convenience. It's a public commitment. You will play your part, and so will I." Mark nodded slowly, the implications of her words starting to sink in. He had known it was a business arrangement, but hearing it so plainly made it feel more real and more daunting. "And what happens if I don't do my part?" Mark asked, a tinge of defiance creeping into his voice. Eleanor's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was no warmth in it.
We need to talk.
"You will," she said
I
simply.
agree.
"Or the consequences
But
could
perhaps
be
somewhere more private.
unpleasant for both of us." The coldness of her words sent a chill down Mark's spine. He wasn't sure what she meant by unpleasant, but he had a feeling he didn't want to find out. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the room was palpable, and Mark could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had agreed to this
Are you
marriage in
certain we should
exchange
accept
for
these
financial
terms?
security, but now it seemed like it was
Absolutely.
more than just
We
that.
hold the stronger
He was
position here.
trapped, whether he liked it or
I understand
not.
why you did
Eleanor
it, but
stood up,
I have
breaking the
questions.
silence. "I know this
And I may
isn't
not
easy
have all
for
the
you,
answers
Mark,"
you're looking
she
for.
said, her voice softening just a touch. "But we both have our roles to play, and if you do yours well, I will make sure your debts are paid, your family is taken care of, and you have everything you need." Mark looked up at her, his mind spinning with 1,000 questions. How long would this last? Was it really worth it? He didn't know, but the weight of his obligations, the pressure to provide for his mother and sister, still loomed large in his thoughts. As
We need to
Eleanor
talk.
turned to leave,
I
she
agree.
paused at the door. "We have a
But
charity
perhaps
gala
somewhere more
tonight.
private.
You'll be with me, of course." "Of course," Mark replied, though he was unsure if he could manage the kind of evening she had in mind. With a nod, Eleanor left the room, and Mark was left to process the new reality of his life. He had no idea what to expect next, but the role he had agreed to play was becoming clearer by the minute.
Are you certain we
Later
should
that
accept
evening,
these terms?
as Mark prepared for the gala,
Absolutely.
he couldn't help but
We
feel
hold
a
the
sense
stronger
of
position
unease.
here.
He hadn't signed up
I
for the
understand
kind of
why you
life
did it,
Eleanor
but
had just
I
described.
have questions.
The thought of being paraded
And I may
in
not
front
have
of
all
her
the answers
business
you're looking
associates
for.
in the press, all while pretending to be a part of her world, made him feel more like a pawn than a partner. But as the evening approached, Mark couldn't help but feel a pang of curiosity. Eleanor had made it clear that this was a transaction, a business deal between two people with mutual benefits. And yet, there was something about her, something elusive in the way she held herself. Was she really as cold and calculating as she appeared, or was there more to her than
We
he
need
had
to
been
talk.
led to believe?
I
The
agree.
gala was a whirlwind. Mark
perhaps
found
somewhere more
himself in a
private.
sea of glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos, his every move observed by eyes that didn't miss a thing. Eleanor led him through the crowd with ease, introducing him to everyone from high-profile business leaders to celebrities. He smiled and nodded when necessary, playing his part as her husband, even though it felt more like an act than anything genuine. As the night wore on, Mark found himself standing alone for a moment, watching Eleanor interact with a group of influential guests. She was the center of attention, effortlessly commanding the room. He couldn't help but feel small in comparison. But then, just as he was about to leave the area, Eleanor caught his eye across the room. Their gazes locked, and for a brief moment, something shifted. Was it a flicker of understanding? Or maybe just a brief crack in her armor? Mark wasn't sure, but the look she gave him made him wonder. Maybe this arrangement wasn't as simple as he had first thought. Stay tuned for the next part of the story. Will Mark continue to play the role he's been given? Or will his feelings for Eleanor begin to change? The night of the gala ended, but Mark's mind was still racing. The flashing lights, the endless conversations, and the constant hum of the crowd left him feeling disoriented. Eleanor had moved effortlessly through the evening, smiling and greeting everyone like they were old friends. Mark, on the other hand, felt like a ghost, always one step behind, always playing the part he was told to play. As they left the event, Eleanor's limousine waited for them, sleek and black against the city lights.
And I may
Mark
not have
stepped
all
into
the
the back
answers you're
seat,
looking for.
his body exhausted, but his mind still buzzing with questions about the evening and about Eleanor. Was it all just a performance for her? Or was there something more beneath the surface? Sitting beside him, Eleanor didn't seem tired at all. She gazed out of the window, her expression distant, as if the night had been just another routine for her. Mark could feel the tension between them, though neither of them said anything. He wasn't sure what to expect from her anymore. Was she truly as cold and detached as she appeared, or was there a side of her that she was hiding? The car ride was silent for a while, and as they pulled up to the mansion, Eleanor finally broke the quiet. "You did well tonight," she said, her tone neutral. "You played your part, and that's what matters." Mark nodded, but inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this arrangement than just playing a part. He didn't want to question her right now. He didn't even know where to begin, but the look they shared earlier at the gala stayed with him. It was a fleeting moment, but it made him wonder if she ever thought about him as more than just a companion for appearances. The following days passed in a blur of events, meetings, and more public appearances. Mark continued to follow Eleanor's lead, attending dinners and social gatherings, always by her side, always in the background. The contract they had signed felt heavier each day. He had agreed to this life for financial security, but the more he was immersed in Eleanor's world, the more conflicted he felt. One afternoon, as Mark was walking through the mansion, he stumbled upon a room he hadn't noticed
perhaps
before.
somewhere more private.
It was tucked away at the back of the house, a quiet space with bookshelves lining the walls and soft light filtering through the windows. He stepped inside, feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in this house before. It was a stark contrast to the cold grandeur of the rest of the mansion. As he wandered around the room, his fingers brushing over the spines of books, he heard a soft sound from behind him. He turned to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "I didn't know this room was here," Mark said,
And I may not
feeling
have all the
slightly
answers you're
embarrassed.
looking for.
Eleanor nodded. "It's my private space. I come here when I need to think." She paused, as if considering something, before walking into the room and sitting in one of the chairs by the window. "I suppose you've been wondering why I asked you to marry me." Mark stood there for a moment, unsure how to respond. "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought it was just a business arrangement. But sometimes, I wonder if there's more to it." Eleanor's gaze softened slightly, but she quickly masked it with her usual composure. "It's true that it started as a business arrangement. But it's more than that, Mark. You're not just my husband for show. I need someone who can help me carry the weight of this life. Someone who understands the pressures, the expectations." Mark took a tentative step forward, his curiosity piqued. "And you think I can help with that?" Eleanor looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "I don't trust many people, Mark, but you." She trailed off, as if unsure how to finish her thought. "You're different. You don't play the game the way everyone else does. You don't care about status or
And
appearances.
I may not have all the
You're
answers you're
real."
looking for.
Mark felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of their situation. "But I'm just playing a role," he said, his voice low. I'm here because I need this arrangement. I'm not in love with you. Eleanor sighed, her shoulders slumping for the first time since he had met her. I know, she said quietly. I never expected love from this. But sometimes, Mark, life doesn't give us the choices we want. We make the best of what we have.
We need to talk.
For the first time,
I agree.
Mark saw a crack in her armor,
But perhaps
a
somewhere more
vulnerability
private.
he hadn't known existed. It made him wonder if there was more to Eleanor than just the cold, businesslike woman he had been led to believe. As they sat in the quiet room, the tension between them shifted. It was no longer just a business arrangement. There were feelings, unspoken, perhaps, but real nonetheless. Neither of them
Are you
knew what
certain
the
we should
future
accept
held,
these terms?
but they both knew that their lives had
Absolutely.
already begun to
We hold
change
a
in
stronger
ways they
position
hadn't
here.
anticipated.
I
Stay tuned
understand
to
why
find
you
out
did
what
it,
happens
but
next.
I have
Will
questions.
Mark and Eleanor's relationship
And I may not
stay
have all the
strictly
answers you're
business,
looking for.
or will something more develop between them? The days following that quiet conversation in Eleanor's private room felt like a turning point. Mark couldn't quite place what had shifted, but something between them had changed. He had been used to living life on his own terms, always controlling what he could, but now, with Eleanor, he felt like he was walking a fine line between duty and desire. Eleanor had kept her distance after their conversation, but there was a subtle
We need to
shift in
talk.
her demeanor,
I
a
agree.
softening that Mark wasn't
But
used
perhaps
to seeing.
somewhere more private.
It was as though she was opening up, but only just enough to make him wonder. One afternoon, Mark was in the study, reading through some legal documents for a new business deal Eleanor had brought him into. The words blurred in front of his eyes as his mind kept wandering back to her. Her smile, the way she looked at him that night at the gala. It was a
Are
look
you
he
certain
hadn't
we
been
should
able to
accept these
shake.
terms?
Maybe it was his imagination,
Absolutely.
or maybe something more.
We hold the stronger
Just
position
then,
here.
the door to the study opened.
I understand why
and
you did
Eleanor
it, but
stepped in,
I have
her
questions.
heels clicking against the polished
And I may not
floor.
have all the answers
She
you're
looked at
looking
him for a
for.
moment before walking toward the desk. We have a meeting tonight, she said, her tone casual but commanding. You'll need to come with me. Mark glanced up, nodding in acknowledgement. Of course. He stood, stretching his arms before following her out of the room. As they walked through the mansion toward the event room, Mark couldn't help but feel that familiar sense of unease. He had never been comfortable in high society settings, surrounded by people who lived their lives
to
as
talk.
though it were all one
I
big
agree.
performance. But as he
But
followed
perhaps somewhere more private.
Eleanor through the crowd, he began to notice something new, a kind of magnetic presence about her. She wasn't just the cold businesswoman he had first met. There was something deeper, something that made him wonder if he was starting to see the real Eleanor. The event was a gala, an exclusive affair with top-tier investors and CEOs. Mark had gotten used
certain
to
we
the
should
routine
accept
by
these
now,
terms?
but tonight felt different.
Absolutely.
The way Eleanor introduced him to
stronger
people,
position here.
her touch on his arm,
I understand
subtle
why you did
glances
it,
they
but
exchanged,
I have
it felt
questions.
almost like they were more
And
than
I may
just
not have all the
business
answers
partners.
you're looking for.
Mark couldn't shake the feeling that she was testing something, testing him. As the evening went on, Mark found himself standing alone for a moment, watching Eleanor from across the room. She was speaking with a group of investors, her posture poised, her smile captivating. But there was something about the way she held herself, the way she commanded attention, that made Mark feel both out of place and drawn to her at the same time. A sudden voice broke his thoughts. You're looking a
We
little
need to
lost,
talk.
Mark.
I
It was
agree.
Eleanor, standing beside him
But
now.
perhaps somewhere more
She
private.
smiled, but it was a little different from her usual smile. Softer, almost as if she were actually looking at him for the first time. I'm just trying to get used to this whole world, Mark said, feeling self-conscious. It's a lot to take in. Eleanor's smile deepened. I know, she said, but you're handling it well. She glanced around the room.
Are you certain
I knew
we should
you had
accept
it in
these
you.
terms?
Mark felt a rush of warmth at
Absolutely.
her words, and
We
for a
hold the
moment,
stronger
he
position
allowed
here.
himself to believe that
I
maybe,
understand why you did
just
it,
maybe,
but
there was
I have
more to this
questions.
arrangement than he had
And
thought.
I may not have all the
Maybe
answers
there was a
you're
way
looking
to make
for.
it work, to find something real in all of this. But before he could say anything more, Eleanor's attention shifted to the group of investors. Excuse me, she said, her voice snapping back into business mode. I need to speak with them. Mark nodded, watching as she walked off, her presence commanding the room once again. He stood there for a moment, deep in thought. He had signed up for a business deal, a contract, but there were moments like
We
this
need to
that
talk.
made him question whether
I
it was
agree.
all just business anymore.
But perhaps
Later
somewhere
that
more
night,
private.
as they returned to the mansion, Mark found himself once again reflecting on everything. The contract was clear. This was a marriage of convenience, not love. But the more time he spent with Eleanor, the more he wondered if something could grow between them. He had never expected to feel this way, but now, After everything, he wasn't so sure.
Are you certain we should
Eleanor
accept
stood
these
at the
terms?
top of the grand staircase,
Absolutely.
her back to him as she
We hold the
gazed out of
stronger
the
position
window.
here.
The moonlight bathed
I
her in
understand
a
why you
soft
did it,
glow,
but
and for the
I have
first time,
questions.
Mark saw her
And I
not
may
as
not
the
have all the
powerful
answers you're looking
businesswoman
for.
he had met, but as something more vulnerable. She wasn't invincible. She was human. I know what you're thinking, Eleanor said, breaking the silence. She turned to face him, her eyes soft. But this, all of this, it's never been easy for me either. Mark was taken aback. I didn't mean to. I wasn't. She shook her head, silencing him with a small gesture. I know what you're thinking, Mark. I just don't want you to feel like you're trapped here.
We need to talk.
You have a choice.
I agree.
This was always a deal, but you don't
perhaps
have to
somewhere
be
more
stuck
private.
in it. Mark's heart raced. Could she really be offering him a way out? Was there a chance he could break free from the contract without losing everything? Maybe I'm not stuck, he said slowly. Maybe I don't want to be stuck. Eleanor's gaze softened, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Then make a choice, Mark. But whatever happens,
Are you
don't
certain we
regret
should
it.
accept these terms?
As she turned to walk away, Mark stood
Absolutely.
there, torn
We hold the
between the
stronger
life he had
position
agreed to and the life that
I understand
might
why
still
you
be
did it,
possible.
but
The path
I have
ahead was
questions.
uncertain, but for the
And I
first
may not
time,
have all the
he
answers you're
felt like
looking
he
for.
had the power to choose his own way. Stay tuned to see how Mark's decision will shape his future. Will he stay in the contract, or will he find a way to break free? The next few days were filled with uncertainty for Mark. He had never imagined that his life would take such an unexpected turn, but Eleanor's words lingered in his mind. Make a choice, Mark. Don't regret it. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at a crossroads, torn between the safety of the life he had
We need to
already
talk.
committed to and the
I agree.
possibility of something more.
But perhaps
The
somewhere more
Days
private.
passed in a blur of business meetings, public appearances, and the cold, calculated routine that had become his new reality. Mark attended events with Eleanor, always by her side, playing his part in the charade. But something had changed. The more he spent time with her, the more he found himself questioning the nature of their arrangement.
Are you certain we
Was
should
this
accept these
truly
terms?
just a business deal? Or was there a
Absolutely.
connection between them
We hold
that
the
neither
stronger
of them was
position
willing
here.
to acknowledge?
I
It was
understand
during
why
one
you
of
did
these
it, but
events, a
have
high-profile
questions.
dinner with clients and
And
investors,
I may not have all the
that
answers
Mark
you're
finally
looking for.
realized how far things had gone. Eleanor was speaking to a group of businessmen, her confident voice cutting through the murmur of the room. She was in her element, effortlessly charming everyone around her. But as Mark stood there, watching her, he noticed something he hadn't before, a look of vulnerability that flashed across her face for just a split second. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but it made him wonder if she was as unaffected by their arrangement as she let
We
on.
need to talk.
Later that evening,
I agree.
as they walked back to the car,
But perhaps somewhere
Eleanor
more
turned to
private.
Mark with a thoughtful expression. "You've been quiet tonight," she remarked. "What's on your mind?" Mark hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I'm just thinking," he said finally. "About everything. About us." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, but she didn't say anything, allowing him to continue. "I know this started as a business
Are you certain
arrangement,"
we should accept
Mark
these
said
terms?
slowly, his voice barely above a
Absolutely.
whisper. "But
We hold the
sometimes
stronger
it
position
feels like
here.
it's becoming something else.
I understand
I
why
don't know
you
what
did
to
it,
think
but
anymore."
I have
Eleanor
questions.
didn't immediately answer.
And I may not have all the
Instead,
answers you're
she
looking
glanced
for.
at him, her gaze softening slightly. "What do you want, Mark?" she asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. Mark's heart raced. This was the moment he had been dreading. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't know if I want to stay in this contract, or if I want to walk away and find something else." Eleanor stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression serious. "You don't have to stay if you don't want to," she said quietly. "I never meant for this to be a prison for you. But I need
We
you to
need to
understand. There are
I agree.
consequences for both of us.
But perhaps
If you
somewhere
walk
more
away
private.
now, it won't be easy." Mark's mind spun as he processed her words. He had known this was coming, but hearing it from her made everything feel more real. He was torn between the life he had already built with her and the uncertain future that lay beyond the contract. Eleanor stepped closer to him, her hand brushing against his arm.
Are you certain we
"I
should
know
accept
this
these
isn't
terms?
love," she said softly,
Absolutely.
her voice almost wistful.
We hold the stronger
But maybe,
position here.
maybe we could find something
I understand
more.
why you did
If you're
it,
willing
but
to try.
I have
Mark
questions.
looked into her eyes,
And I may
searching
not
for
have all
any
the answers
sign
you're
that she
looking
was
for.
being sincere. But all he could see was a woman who had spent her life building walls to protect herself. And in that moment, he realized that he, too, had built his own walls. Walls that were beginning to crack. The silence between them stretched on, but it wasn't uncomfortable. For the first time, Mark felt like he was standing on the edge of something bigger than both of them. Something that could change everything. But the question remained, could he take the leap? That night,
We need to talk.
as they returned to the mansion,
I agree.
Mark found himself staring at
perhaps
the
somewhere
city
more
lights
private.
from the window of his room. He had come here for one reason, financial security. But now, with everything that had happened, he couldn't help but wonder if there was more at stake. Eleanor had offered him an out, a chance to walk away. But the weight of their shared history, the moments they had shared, made it difficult to simply let go. He had signed up for a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, he had started to care.
We
He
hold the
wasn't
stronger
sure what the
position
future
here.
held, but he knew
I understand
one
why
thing.
you did it, but
He had to make a decision.
I have questions.
And for the first time,
And I
Mark
may not
didn't
have
want
all
to
the
regret
answers
it.
you're looking for.
Stay tuned to find out what Mark decides. Will he choose the comfort of what he knows, or will he take the risk of stepping into the unknown with Eleanor? Mark couldn't sleep that night. His thoughts swirled around in his mind, replaying the conversation with Eleanor over and over. Could there really be something more between them? Could they find a way to make this arrangement work, not just as business partners, but as something more? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing for certain. He
We
needed
need
to
to
make a
talk.
decision. The
I
next
agree.
morning, Eleanor was waiting for
perhaps
him
somewhere
in
more
the
private.
grand dining room, her usual composed expression in place. She looked up as he entered, her gaze steady and unreadable. "I've been thinking," Mark said, his voice slightly hesitant, "about what you said last night." Eleanor put down the coffee cup she had been holding and regarded him carefully. "And what have you decided?"
Are
Mark
you certain
took a
we should
deep
accept
breath,
these terms?
feeling the weight of the moment.
Absolutely.
He had already made up his mind,
We hold the
but
stronger
it wasn't
position
easy.
here.
"I can't keep going
I
on
understand
like
why
this,
you did
Eleanor.
it, but
I can't
I have
just
questions.
pretend this is all fine
And I
when
may
I'm
not have all
questioning
the answers
everything."
you're looking for.
Eleanor's face softened, but she didn't interrupt. "I signed up for this contract because I thought it was the only way out," Mark continued. "But somewhere along the way, I started to care about you. I don't know what that means for us, but I can't ignore it anymore." There was a long silence, and Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she was processing his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "So, what do you want, Mark?" Mark swallowed hard, the
We
weight
need
of the
to talk.
decision pressing down
I
on
agree.
him. "I want to be with you,
But perhaps
not
somewhere
just
more
as your
private.
business partner, but as more than that. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm willing to try." Eleanor stood up and walked toward the window, her back to him. For a moment, Mark thought she might say something, but she remained silent, staring out at the view of the city. Finally, she turned to face him, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips.
Are you certain we should
"I never
accept these
expected
terms?
this from you, Mark," she said softly.
Absolutely.
"But maybe I've
We
been
hold the
looking at
stronger
this all
position
wrong.
here.
Maybe I've been so
I
focused
understand
on
why
the
you did it,
business side
but
of things that I
I have
forgot what it
questions.
means to actually be
And I may
with
not
someone."
have all the answers
Mark
you're looking
felt a
for.
wave of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by uncertainty. "So what happens now?" he asked. Eleanor took a step toward him, her expression serious. "What happens now is that we figure this out together. We take it one step at a time. No more pretending. No more contracts. Just us." Mark's heart raced as he processed her words. For the first time, he felt like they were both on the same page, like they were no longer playing a game of
We need to
appearances.
talk.
There was something
I
real
agree.
between them, something that
But
had been
perhaps somewhere
building
more
all
private.
along, even if neither of them had fully acknowledged it until now. "I'm willing to take that step," Mark said quietly. Eleanor nodded, her eyes meeting his with a depth that sent a shiver down his spine. "Then let's see where it takes us." For the first time since they had met, Mark felt a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. He wasn't
Are you
sure what
certain
the
we should
future
accept
held,
these terms?
but he knew one thing. He
Absolutely.
had finally taken
We
control
hold the
of his
stronger
own life.
position here.
And maybe, just
I
maybe,
understand why you
he
did
could
it,
build
but
something real with
I have
Eleanor.
questions.
Stay tuned to see how
I may
Mark
not
and
have all the
Eleanor's
answers you're looking
relationship
for.
unfolds. Will they navigate the challenges ahead, or will the complexities of their past tear them apart? The days following their conversation felt like a new chapter, but Mark couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was still off. Eleanor had promised they would figure things out together, but the weight of their past, the contracts, the expectations, the public facade, was hard to forget. Mark tried to focus on their new reality, but with each passing
to
day,
talk.
he found it more
I agree.
difficult to separate the business
But
from the
perhaps
personal.
somewhere more private.
They had agreed to move forward, but the transition wasn't as easy as either of them had hoped. Eleanor was still the poised, powerful woman who had built an empire, and Mark was still the man who had once been desperate for an escape. They were in uncharted territory now, and there were moments when the lines between them blurred. One afternoon,
Are you certain
Eleanor
we should
invited
accept these
Mark to
terms?
join her at a charity event she was hosting.
Absolutely.
As they
We
entered
hold
the
the
grand
stronger position
ballroom,
here.
Mark was acutely aware
I understand
of the
why
eyes
you
on
did
her.
it, but
They had already
I
been
have
seen
questions.
together in public,
And
but
I may not
tonight
have all
felt
the
different.
answers you're looking for.
Tonight, they weren't just business partners. They were a couple, or at least, that's how the world would see them. Eleanor leaned in close as they walked through the crowd. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of conversation. "I need you to make a good impression tonight." Mark nodded, his nerves rising. He had gotten used to the high-profile events, but tonight felt different. It wasn't just about playing the role. It was about proving that they were more than just a deal. He glanced at Eleanor, noticing the tightness in her jaw as she greeted the guests. She was every bit the CEO, effortlessly, commanding the room. But there was something else in her eyes now, something that made Mark wonder if, deep down, she was just as uncertain as he was. As the night wore on, Mark and Eleanor shared a few moments of private conversation. Eleanor spoke of her company's future, of the charity work she was passionate about, and Mark listened, his admiration for her growing. She was driven,
I understand why you did it,
and yet, there was a vulnerability in her that he hadn't seen before.
And I may not have all the answers you're
looking for. The more he got
to
know her, the more he realized how much she had sacrificed to get where she was. Later, as the event began to wind down, Eleanor took Mark's hand and led him to the balcony, away from the crowd. The city lights stretched out before them, the night air cool and crisp. "Mark," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon, "I've been thinking. I never wanted this to be just a transaction. I know that's how it started, but I never imagined it would come to this." Mark stood beside her, feeling the weight of her words.
Somewhere more private.
"What do you mean?" "I mean," Eleanor continued, "I thought I could control everything. The business, the legacy, even this marriage. But somewhere along the way, I realized that I couldn't control how I felt about you." Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had heard the words, but he wasn't sure he understood their meaning. "Eleanor, are you certain we should accept these terms?" She turned to face him, her expression soft but sincere.
We hold the
"I'm
stronger
saying that maybe
here.
we've been too focused on the contract,
I understand why you did
on
it,
the expectations,
I have
on what
questions.
everyone else thinks.
And I may
But
not
what
have
about
all
us?
the answers you're
What do
looking
we
for.
want?" Mark didn't know what to say. The walls they had built around themselves had always seemed like the safe option, the only way to survive the world they lived in. But now, with Eleanor standing before him, offering him a glimpse into her heart, the choice seemed much harder. "I don't know what I want anymore," Mark admitted. "But I know I don't want to keep pretending. I want something real, Eleanor. I want to see where this can go, without all the games, without the pressure."
We need to talk.
Eleanor reached out,
I agree.
taking his hand in hers.
But perhaps
"Then let's
somewhere
do
more
it.
private.
Let's stop pretending and start figuring it out together." For the first time, Mark felt a sense of peace settle in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he had a chance at something more than just surviving. He could feel the weight of the past lifting, and for the first time, the future felt full of possibility.
Certain we should accept these terms?
Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor move forward. Will they build a life together, or will the challenges of their past prove too difficult to overcome?
I have questions.
The days after their conversation felt
different,
like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Mark and Eleanor had decided to stop pretending, to move past the facade they had been living behind. The business arrangements, the expectations, all the things that had kept them at arm's length were no longer their focus. Instead, they started to build something real, something they could both be a part of. It wasn't easy. The world they inhabited was full of expectations, and there were still people who saw their marriage as nothing more than a strategic partnership. But Mark and Eleanor were no longer interested in playing along with those rules. They were focused on each other, on what they had begun to create together. One afternoon, as they sat on the balcony of Eleanor's mansion, Mark looked at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's funny," he said, "how things turned out. I came here thinking I was just signing a contract, just getting by.
Are you certain we should accept these terms?
I don't know. I feel like I'm actually living." Eleanor smiled back, her eyes soft. "Me too.
I understand why you
For the
did it,
longest
but
time, I thought I could control everything.
And I may not have all the answers you're looking for.
Even this marriage. But with you, Mark, I realized that maybe the best things don't come from control. Maybe they come from letting go." Mark reached out and took her hand in his, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known before. "I never expected this. I never expected to fall for you. But now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." Eleanor's grip on his hand tightened. "Neither can I. I thought I was too far gone for love, too focused on success and legacy. But with you, I see a future.
But perhaps
not just
somewhere
for
more
me,
private.
but for us." Mark leaned in closer, his heart full of emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. "Then let's make that future. No more contracts, no more pretending. Just us." Eleanor looked into his eyes, and for a moment, everything around them faded away. There were no more walls, no more expectations.
Are you certain we should accept
There was
these
just
terms?
the two of them, building something
Absolutely.
real together.
We hold the
That
stronger
evening,
position here.
at a small, private
I understand
dinner,
why you
Mark
did it,
looked
but
at Eleanor with new
I have
eyes.
questions.
They had come a long
And I may
way
not
from the
have all the
strangers
answers
they
you're
had
looking
been
for.
when they first met. The woman who had once been a powerful businesswoman, and the man who had been desperate for escape, had found something unexpected, something worth fighting for. And as the night went on, as they shared quiet moments and small smiles, Mark realized that this wasn't just the end of a story. This was the beginning of something new. They were no longer bound by contracts or obligations. They were free to build their own future, one step at a time.
We need to talk.
As they walked through the mansion
agree.
later that night, Mark
But
turned to
perhaps somewhere
Eleanor
more
with
private.
a newfound sense of certainty. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but I do know one thing. I'm not letting go of this. Of us." Eleanor smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "Neither am I, Mark. Neither am I." And so, with the weight of the past finally behind them, they stepped into the future together.
Are
Two
you certain
people
we
who
should
had
accept
found
these
not
terms?
just love, but a new beginning.
Absolutely.
This is the
We
end of
hold
their
a stronger
journey
position
for
here.
now. But what happens
I
next
understand
for
why
Mark
you
and
did
Eleanor?
it, but
Stay
I have
tuned to find
questions.
out how their love
And I
continues
may
to
not have
grow
all the
and
answers you're
evolve.
looking for.